the first time I got a kettlebell and did kettlebell swings, I was like a new man. I was like standing straighter. I was like, the sweetness part is like to not punish myself if I forget or whatever. Permission that I'm kind of getting used to not doing so much, where I'll just, maybe next time we talk, I'll just be like, Anthony, I'm on the bike. Or maybe I won't even,
But I was blown away that you did that, because it really helped me understand. Hello, I am so excited to be here today with a distinguished guest. Today we're talking about high performance, low capacity, really making time for health and wellness when you're a busy, busy person. And I don't know anyone as busy as our guest here today. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He is a trained and educated physician and biomedical engineer. He's worked at iconic business brands like McKinsey, Google, Genentech, and if that wasn't enough, he is the CEO and founder of his own strategy group, Headland Strategy Group. He's a professional musician, writer, and a serious amateur athlete. I am so excited to have Andrew here today. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Anthony. Great to be here.
This is really, really exciting for me. We have been meeting quarterly for the last almost 4 years, right?
Was it during the pandemic?
Yes, it was like maybe right after, like maybe 3, right?
Okay.
So
from
quarterly.
David, right?
Yes, exactly. One of my friends from business school introduced us, and it's been such a great relationship. I've learned so much from you. What does it actually look like when someone like you, who's extremely accomplished, extremely busy, decides to dedicate themselves to their health and their wellness?
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for all those kind words. Maybe I'll first tell you what it looks like to not have been that way. And part of why I got back into health was that I was about 10 years ago burning the midnight oil, had one baby. My ex-wife had the second one on the way. And I was working late into the night, and I got really sick when sort of like a GI illness went through the household. Usually I wouldn't be, and I got super sick, had to go to the ER and get IV fluids. And that was, I think, the first wake-up call, where I was like, it's like, Andrew, I get it that I was kind of talking to myself, I get it that you love, I was doing writing, all this stuff at night, but it's not sustainable, and that was real. And around that time, I had some employees that were getting into the, actually I have a different one now, but getting into Oura Rings, and that's around the time that I got one to get more curious about my sleep habits, and so that was the start of it,
I am so excited. We're doing a free, yes, I said free, masterclass on how to rebuild your metabolic strength. If you're like me, and for years sacrificed your health at the altar of your career success, or caring for others and your family before caring for yourself, this class is for you. The link is below. Join us. It's going to be fantastic, life-changing. Wow. I mean, how did you find it daunting? Like, we listed all these accomplishments, and you're heading a strategy group, and you have young children. Like, where do you start? How do you begin? Like, is it overwhelming? Because I really want our listeners and viewers to understand that it's doable, right? And so, could you share a little bit about that?
I was thinking about this. I came up with like the 3 S's. So like, it's roughly like start small, and then be sweet to yourself. It's like so I found, that's the general idea of how I've built a lot of new habits. I did read The Power of Habit, which is sort of like the atomic habits of a sort of earlier generation. And I haven't read Atomic Habits or followed that guy, but I've heard great things. So what does it look like? So start small. So maybe I'll pick something like sleep. I make a commitment to do something new, and then start small. So maybe like, say, one night a week, try to get an 8-hour or what they call sleep opportunity. And then the sweetness part is like to not punish myself if I forget or whatever. And then a lot of your audience maybe sounds like achievement oriented. I found that I would do things like checklists, even to the point that sometimes my teens now tease me like, "Oh, that's another one of Daddy's checklists," and I'm like, "Come on, I'm trying to like do something positive here."
Right? Yeah.
But that's yeah. So those are some of the ways I would start. There are other things you can do. I think it depends on. It requires some self knowledge. So. I know that I was cued into these micro experiments and giving myself feedback, and then I could look after a week or two. Oh yeah, maybe my sleep score has gotten better, and I'd always set the bar again small, so it wouldn't be like I wouldn't aim for like a sleep score like on the Aura Ring. It's a 85 or better. That's really good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't aim for that. I'd be like, well, can it improve? Like, what's the gain? That's another mindset that's really helpful. Is the gain rather than the sort of fixed target. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm trying. Oh, the other people sometimes appreciate like a peer vibe. So you might have a friend who's going to do it too, maybe, or a romantic partner. They both get Aura rings. It's just a sleep example.
Yeah,
but that would apply to anything I've done as meditation, weight training, exercise. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's great to have a community and someone that you can connect with to really help you stay on task and target. I know. I want to rewind a little bit back to when we met. I was in a very, very difficult spot. I was realizing that I had a mental and physical health crisis. I was 420 pounds. I was failing at my job, failing at my relationship. I felt stuck in my body, stuck in my house, stuck in a job. And I reached out to David and about opportunities and about just career advice, and he connected us. And it was such an amazing time because I was changing everything about myself. And so and a lot of that was going on in the background, unbeknownst to you. Can you talk to me a little bit about if we can rewind 5 or 10 years ago, when before you got sick and you were just burning in the midnight oil and really pushing yourself? Like, what was that like? And then, because I think that people need to understand that there's always an aha moment, right? Like when you got sick, and for me, it was going to my business school reunion and friends seeing me and saying, "You look horrible. We're really worried about you." That was my aha moment. So could you talk about what was going on at that time and why it was hard for you to understand that you weren't really focusing on the right things?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for that heartwarming. Yeah. I don't think I realized the full context when we first got connected, but I always appreciated building the friendship with you. So thanks, Anthony.
Thank you.
Well, I've heard, a few things. One is I heard some modern dating coaches say this expression is never want to waste a good divorce. And maybe the broader context is I think it can be helpful when we do have a crisis. That can be a window for a lot of change all at once. And what I was talking about was more like the incremental change. So let's see. Yeah, what did it feel like? So this would have been in the 2010s. My first daughter was born in 2010. Second in 2013. It was I was physically tired. I was at that time, working full time at Genentech. And then there's a lot happening all at once. I was doing a lot of the administrative and household and child rearing stuff too. It was a lot. I still kept the flame alive of I maybe go back even farther to my childhood. I was encouraged by my mother, who was a refugee from Hungary, to have a creative time. So I was used to dreamy. I grew up playing with Legos, building stuff, imagining stories, and then I got into music. Did my first paid job was performing semi-professionally in middle school with adult groups, and then. So I was kind of into that arts side of stuff. And even when my kids were little, even though I had retired from the saxophone, which is my primary instrument, I still it was too infectious in my soul to so even if the kids were just into Disney movies, I would get out, we had a piano, or I would work on the drum set, or even a cajon, which fits into like small apartment kind of thing. Just do something to, or like when Hamilton came out, there are a few interesting drum beats. I would just work on those for fun. So there's always something up in that energy. I don't remember being completely bedraggled ever, in part because I did, from prior experiences, learn that to have a few kind of pots going at once. So even if everything else was crashing, like probably my darkest period was in the 2000s after my mom died and my serious girlfriend at the time dumped me. And this might be a digression. I'll come back to the point. I promise. But I had music to lean on, and I had some close, really emotionally vulnerable guy friends to lean on, and to some extent some family. So that helped. So coming back to your question, it looked like the other actually insight was my ex-wife. We get along. We were friends, amicable. We're co-parents of our kids now. She pointed out, I think it was 2017, she pointed out that I was getting really skinny and my posture, I was hunching over a lot. And that was with our third kid. I was holding the baby a lot and hadn't been exercising much. And that was the second thing that happened that got me I got into high intensity interval training, which in hindsight, I do not recommend to start with. It's kind of constrained your system a lot.
Yeah.
Although even though I say that now, the first time I got a kettlebell and did kettlebell swings, I was like a new man. I was like standing straighter. I was like, where are all these muscles that haven't been used?
Right. Yeah.
Did I answer your question? I'm not sure if I did.
Yeah, no, you did. You did. No, that was great. I wanted to just dig in a little bit more about that. A lot of our listeners are in the same place, successful, respected, stretched thin, feeling themselves. They'll handle their health after the next big thing, right? Like, I'm going to close this deal and then I'm going to focus on my health. I'm going to sell this company and I'm going to focus on my health. I'm going to get to Q2. I'm going to focus on my health. Why is that really dangerous? And what can you tell our listeners about really seizing the moment and focusing on their health today and instead of waiting for tomorrow?
Yeah. A few things. I mean, there's definitely a you only live once kind of mindset. And I don't mean that just in a perhaps silly philosophical way, but that when we look at chronic disease and the drivers of that, like cardiovascular disease, there's a lot of years going into getting, say, atherosclerosis in our arteries. And so if you don't put in the time now, then it's going to become a ticking time bomb later, especially for men. I think we're more likely to suffer from that. So that's one. Second is, I think there's strengths and weakness to any perspective. So I think it's really admirable to have an achievement mindset. That's part of why I say if we're going to do a marathon, we don't just get distracted on day one and just go eat a bunch of donuts, right? Do the marathon. And so a lot of your audience, they're executives, they have a lot of responsibilities. That's admirable. And we need to recharge. A third thing I was going to say is I find it interesting. I got this idea from two entrepreneurial coaches, Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. They write some books that have been blowing my mind. One is called 10X is Easier Than 2X. And in that book, they point out that, business leaders or any kind of organizational leader should be more like a professional athlete or a professional musician. So they use examples like, so the NBA basketball playoffs are happening now. It's like a professional athlete in one of those teams doesn't play the playoffs every day.
Right.
Whereas you see some executives, they're working nights, weekends, no sense of, or no value of recovery. And I think so the problem is, another long way to get to answer your question is that I think people are actually enriching for being busy and eroding the quality of their work. Whereas if they learned how to, learn leadership skills so they can empower other people, so they're doing less on a per day basis. And it's also enriching for those folks that get empowered if you structure it right or skillfully. And then also to find some way to evaluate when are you doing your best work, and are you doing your best work if you're up at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night versus when you feel refreshed, energized, and you've taken a break from work.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's really, really important. And I think that, we high achievers, we tend to believe no one can do it as good as we can, right? And that you need to be involved. And so it really takes strength to delegate and to really carve out time for yourself. So I want to talk a little bit about your health kind of reboot and your achievements you've been doing of late. One of the things that I want to talk about is that one of our quarterly meetings we were about to meet, and you got on camera and you said, Anthony, it's been a crazy day. I've been busy. I really need to do some zone 2 cardio. Do you mind if I jump on the bike while we meet? And you're talking to someone who lost 120 pounds, who changed his life, who focused on zone 2, hit all of this. But I was blown away that you did that, because it really helped me understand that you were not only a professional, like an accomplished professional, but someone who focused on their health, right? And that you understand the importance of it. So can you talk about prioritizing that, and then the achievements you've done and some of the things you've been working on?
Sure. I'll give you one other kind of catalyst moment, which was my dad died suddenly in 2023. July 4th, just dropped dead, and he had like the big heart attack, and he hadn't had any angina, what the doctors call angina, sort of referred pain, stents, prior minor heart attacks, and people thought he was healthy. I mean, in hindsight, he may not have been doing enough or the right kind of exercise, but he's also 80. He's a man. Those are like 2 major risk factors for heart attack. That was a wake-up call to me as well. By that point, I've been doing high-intensity interval training, but not thought more broadly about a whole exercise regimen. So I guess, one way to answer your question is things have been accumulating. And I do this, and a number of coaches I've encountered on YouTube emphasize that it's easy to look at one person as a snapshot and be like, oh, how did they get there? How did they lose over 100 pounds? I could never do that. And it's like, well, like in my life, it wasn't like I just arrived being like, I'm like an amateur competitive rollerblader. We'll come to that in a moment. I didn't just arrive that way. It's like a small accumulation of things. So part of how I protect the time, I guess is part of your question, is I prioritize it. And I find, and I do a fair amount of journaling. So I ask myself, I like to do a lot of small experiments in life, like try something for a week, a month, a day, and then I reflect on it. And I think that's where I'm going to talk more about mindfulness, but having a mindfulness and a journaling practice help, because I feel like I'm not always like fully here, but over time I can process what happened and how I felt. So I'll decide if it feels good or not. Like, does it feel good if I work back-to-back meetings for 8 hours in a row and do no exercise? No, I have like this mental fog, a sort of mental fry feeling. Don't like that. I've also found when I've taken breaks from work, I sometimes, especially in a role where you have like a leadership role where it's my responsibility to invent things that our organization will grow into, as well as solve other kinds of problems. I have come up with a lot of good ideas when I've just taken time off. So that's generally how it goes. And then I think there's still a bit of polite permission that I'm kind of getting used to not doing so much, where I'll just, maybe next time we talk, I'll just be like, Anthony, I'm on the bike. Or maybe I won't even, so I'm getting better at just prioritizing myself. Yeah.
No, it's really important to do that. And I think, for me, one of the most difficult things was to prioritize myself, right? Like, I was always worried about my nieces and nephews, worried about my mom, worried about my team. I never thought to worry about myself. And what I realized is that, and this, I realized this through, going through this crisis and speaking to a therapist about how I was kinder to a stranger on the street than I was to myself. And that was very, very sobering, right? And so could you talk about grace and about, because you kind of alluded to that, right? Like it is a constant struggle for me to really, and I think it has a lot to do with the way I was raised and the way my father kind of inspired me to be better. But like the way that I took it was like not, in the most fruitful way. So could you talk a little bit about that, about grace and about forgiveness and about just really being able to do that?
Thanks for sharing. A grace would be like grace towards oneself,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I'll again maybe answer in a multi-part way.
I love it. That's fine.
one of my greatest mentors was Paul Jeffrey. Ran a Rutgers jazz program and then Duke's, and he mentored a lot of professional musicians. And he was sometimes difficult to work with, but I basically was apprenticed to him as an individual and as an orchestrator, arranger for a lot of basically professional jazz charts. And he had toured. He was in Dizzy Gillespie's big band, Charles Mingus's, toured with B.B. King, just a stellar resume. And he, in general, role model for me I felt like I learned there are two ways to do high achievement. One is the self-flagellating way, where there might be some internal, a lot of criticism challenging us. And I think some athletes have publicized how that doesn't work. Like I think Andre Agassi and Dan Marino are two that come to mind. He's from the generation I grew up in, who talked about that later in their lives. Or there's a way to find curiosity and a continually kind of a learning approach where one keeps going in the direction of curiosity or meaning, or if those words don't work for the audience, just where you feel you're needed and you have skills that can help that need. And you feel like, I'm ready to do this. It might be challenging, and that's kind of good to have some challenge. And then that can be a way that's easier, gentler, to keep learning and then when you combine that with some things like, I learned this from Sullivan and Hardy too, a GAIN mindset, GAIN, where a leader still looks forward in terms of setting strategy and plans, but when they evaluate themselves, they only look backward. And they came up with this paradigm because they learned that there's a high percentage of executives they've coached, thousands they've coached, that have, despite money, status, influence, they're deeply dissatisfied, like maybe even to the point of suicidality sometimes. And they realized a generality of those folks who are suffering more is that they define themselves, they use what they call a gap mindset to their, what have I not achieved? Or if I'm walking, and I'm walking to the horizon, of course the horizon keeps moving. So that's helped me to have that kind of GAIN mindset. I'm trying to think. There's one other thing I was going to say, but I lost my train of thought there.
It's okay.
And then grace.
Yes.
I think that's where a self-kindness practice, like something that helps one get into an intuitive connecting with oneself. By intuitive, it's not like an intellectual exercise. I'm a fan of meditation.
Yes.
And I'm gradually getting trained as a teacher in a secular paradigm and a Buddhist one. So mindfulness-based stress reduction is the secular one, and then Vipassana or Western mindfulness is the Buddhist one. But there are paths to do prayer, like in Christianity, there's contemplative prayer. There's basically every world religion has a mystical branch that has some practices that people can learn. So there's something for everybody out there. And if that doesn't speak to listeners, there can also be like dance or other ways you get into your body and out of your mind, so to speak. So I find that has been a way to check in with myself and leads to grace, because I can see like, oh, this body feels tired today, or something's hurting. Maybe I should, take it easy on the workouts. So that helps. And then finally, I think having your tribe, whether that's family members who really genuinely care and can be like, Andrew, you look like you're dragging today. Maybe you should take it easy. And if you don't, it could be caring friends. So I've been definitely grateful to be cultivating a lot of friends, and so that's helpful.
No, I think it's so important because, once again, like the wake up call was when one of my friends from my business school said, this isn't good. You're really struggling. And to think about it, at the time of our reunion, we had lost, we're a small class, Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth, very intimate class. We had lost several of our classmates to suicide and to health events, right? And so it was something that was rocking us all. And so it was very difficult to hear, but because of all of that, it was very, very sobering, right? And so it really grounded me, and I really, like, it changed my life forever. And I was very appreciative of that. So I want to like lighten it up a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
and talk a little bit about, so busy professionals, executives, they're out there. And what one or two things would you advise them? Because you've talked about a lot of things that are really, really exciting, and it's so important to understand that one size doesn't fit all, right? Like that, something that is helping me to ground myself and be mindful may not help you. So what one or two things would you advise people to consider or think about, or in how to find that? What's that for them?
Sure, yeah. Well, first would be find something that activates a sense of childlike playfulness for them, a spark of, so it could look like I had a friend, she just bought, she describes herself as very serious and a business professional, and she bought herself a coloring book and a bunch of glitter pens. And she was almost embarrassed to share it with a friends group when we were catching up. Yeah. And I could see her face light up, like she's just having a good time. Yeah. And that kind of, I'm of course a big fan of music, so and I always like to recommend that music is such an access point for people that it doesn't have to be like, okay, like just because I'm playing profession or whatever, it's not really what it's about. For me, it's an accumulation of, I'm in my 40s, I've been playing saxophone for like 40 years basically, and it's accumulation of constant learning and experience. But there's so much value someone can get from learning, I'd say a more easier to learn instrument, like maybe at least a beginner level, like piano or guitar. But I think it also is really like what speaks to the person. So my general litmus test is if you're going to evaluate, okay, hitting on this theme again, but it's like how you feel afterwards. Like if you feel more grounded, like more, and if that phrase doesn't mean like something for you, it's more like like you feel comfortable in your own skin more, don't care what other people think quite so much, maybe a little bit more at ease, a little more confident. Maybe a smile's coming up on your face, and you're not hurting anyone, obviously, in the process. So I would. That's the big picture recommendation. Whether that looks like doing some stand-up comedy, where hopefully not being mean to anybody, but poking fun at life, or painting, dancing. Definitely things from the arts. I feel like in general are going to help. The second one is I'm a big fan of what's called everyday mindfulness. So this looks like, when we talk about meditation, sometimes that feels like, oh, Andrew, here's another thing I have to do, and I don't have time to do it. And I totally get that. There are, though, a lot of ways you can fit something like that into one's day. So I'd like to do, so I arrived here early, which is a bit uncharacteristic of me. But I used the time I just took a 10-minute walk. I set a meditation bell, just enjoyed the sunshine, and just try to become aware of my steps, what I noticed in my body. One of my knees is a little tired today. So that's something, we all have those gaps in time. And I have observed, I'm not like a social scientist, but going to airports, I notice a lot of people, and maybe looking over their shoulders on what's on their devices more than I should, but people use that time to be on Instagram, and nothing wrong with that in limited doses. I'm on it too, but, that could be time when you're getting grounded and giving the mind a break, which is the final thing I'll share. I noticed I started to do micro breaks, I'll set a 1-minute timer, maybe like 3 times a day right now. I mean, especially after like a big intense meeting, and I'm just like, I gotta kind of just like let that kind of integrate, and then kind of like a palate cleanser rather than jump into the next thing. I find it unsticks the stickiness of the thoughts of whatever is happening, like whether it's a tense meeting or just intellectually demanding. and is a bit of a refresher for the next one. So those are a few little tricks I have.
Nice.
And again, those don't add any, you're doing something new, but you're not really, and you may be taking away time from something that I would argue. But again, a lot of what I recommend is like, here's some ideas and then go try it and see what you think. That's pretty much my advice in a nutshell for all these things.
Yeah.
So I encourage the audience to try some of these things, see what's working, and conversely, see what you do in your, like, how does it, like, let's say someone watches 2 or 3 hours of TV. How do you feel after that versus how do you feel if you go for an hour walk with no device? Maybe with a loved one if you live with somebody, or do it alone in a safe place.
No, that's great. I mean, I want to talk a little bit about being present, right? Like talk about mindfulness. And, I look back on the time when I was like in such a bad space, and I look at pictures. I don't even remember being there. I don't remember those events because I was always worried about what I didn't do, what I had to do, who I was letting down, like why I wasn't enough, imposter syndrome. I don't deserve this job. My whole family's counting on me. Like, how do you're a musician, athlete, father, CEO, strategist, right? Like, how do you stay present? How do you ensure that your girls and your family, that you're there for them, and that you're present? Like, it's something that that I look back on and I focus on every day, trying to be present. But for our busy executives who didn't implode their lives like I did and changed everything about it, like, how do they do that? Like, how can you share that?
Sure. So one is mindfulness practice. So I've been doing that more or less daily for almost 20 years. So that builds the muscle of, it's basically practicing non-judgmental awareness or attention. So it's building that muscle so that when I have time in a meeting, I'm trying to be fully present. Two is I've learned, I guess the hard way, that, let's say I'm on a Zoom meeting, if I'm multitasking, my listening quality goes down. And at our company, we have we have a radical candor culture. We rebranded it Compassionate Candor, but it's based on Kim Scott's book and paradigm called Radical Candor. And I got some compassionate candor after one of the meetings that they could tell I wasn't paying attention. And then my job, because at this stage of our company, I have a sales responsibility too. So my ability to listen is like literally correlated to like revenue for the company.
Right.
So that also is kind of sobering. Whereas if, say, no one cared what I thought, or maybe it'd be different. But those are probably the two main things. Also with presence, I think the other factors we talked a little about sleep, but I think like sleeping well, eating appropriate meals, those all contribute as well. Because if your blood sugar is low, you didn't get a good night's sleep. I mean, of course that happens to all of us, but if you're tonically, meaning like every night being really dysregulated with sleep, that's going to catch up. And maybe the fourth thing is I like to be pretty intentional about my time. Sometimes that can be misunderstood as rigid, like, but it's more like a prioritized flexibility. So I know that what's important to me, it's like business, family, caring for myself, and I prioritize how I spend my days. So I won't say yes to any meeting request that pops up on the calendar. I have like a kind of behind the scenes framework I also got from Sullivan and Hardy, where I pick focus days, recovery days, and kind of buffer/practice days. And I try to, where I can, stack like, so I have these ups and downs to the week. So not every day is like, pedal to the metal, just grinding. It's like I have a few high stakes meetings, like maybe new client we're in our line of work is like new client we're trying to win, or like I'm designing something that'll maybe drive like 20-50% of our revenue growth. And that's like really fully present for that. And then, but I'm not going to stack that day with a whole bunch of kind of like checking in, coordinating meetings. Honestly, those kind of like are soul sucking for me when I'm in the creative mode. And then, but I know that that's part of responsibility. It's like, okay, we got to make sure people know what they're doing and all this stuff is clear. And so I'll have a different day where I'm not on as much, and I maybe take a break. And like, I had a day like that yesterday where I went to a yoga class, first time in like a decade, I think I went to yoga class. And I'd had a really intense day the day before, like fire on all pistons, numerous dimensions of life. And it was just like, we're just going to take it slower today.
Nice.
So those is roughly 4 ways that I do that. Present.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. I think that'll help our listeners really think of ideas and opportunities to be present. I want to touch on something that you mentioned was about food, right? About eating. And so for me, it was a big part of my renaissance or rebirth. Like I always thought as a busy executive that I didn't have time to cook. I love cooking, right? But I was too busy to cook. And so one of the things I quickly realized is that if you don't make it yourself, you don't know what's in it, right? Could you talk about nutrition and what that looks like? As you know, I have a cookbook that I created. It's called Cooking Heavyweight Style, Reclaim Your Life and Reclaim Your Health, right? And so it's a big part of my story of trying to take dishes that were culturally handed down to me through my ancestors, my grandparents, and really make them healthier and then make them a part of my health and wellness journey. Could you talk about nutrition and how important that is?
Sure, yeah. And congrats, by the way, on the cookbook. I've been meaning to get it. I haven't got it yet.
Yes,
so.
I'll make sure you get it.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. That greases the gears.
I'll get you a copy. No worries.
Okay, thanks, Anthony. Thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Gosh, where to start? Cooking is very important to me. I grew up in a house where my mom and my grandpa, both on the Hungarian side, cooked. My grandfather reinvented himself as a professional chef.
Wow.
I mean, he got up to that rank, and then a general manager of country clubs. So he was professional military in Hungary. When they escaped secretly, this is escaping Soviet-controlled Hungary at risk of death. He was sponsored by Quakers, and in the refugee camp. And as a non-citizen, you can't work for the military of the new country, right? So he volunteered to become a cook and just worked his way up to like head cook and chef and all that stuff. So I grew up kind of spoiled with like good food, and they cooked a fair amount of Hungarian food as well as kind of other cuisines. And then I learned to cook when, before we started having kids. And for me, especially with my mom and her dad having passed on both a long time ago, that felt like, and it's one of these things, another energy I like to draw on without getting into a kind of mystical or new agey elements, just like, just a kind honoring of, since you brought up your ancestors, like memories of relatives who have moved on, and they were really alive in the kitchen. These are like really gregarious people that I love dearly, and they would just kind of just an explosion of energy in the kitchen, laughter and stories, and everything was coming out. And so I smile and remember that, and even in my earlier years when I was totally bumbling with cooking, and so that was one thing, is just kind of let it go in more of the hands of the ancestors. And it's not all, and this might be resonate with your audience, I find it's helpful sometimes to let go of a need to control so much. And one way I let go a lot is to, especially also when I'm confused in life, is like, well, maybe an ancestor, or they could be living, or, has solved that or represented an energy that I can lean on. So, and then cooking to be more practical, a bit more practical. So that's the inspiration side. Then I learned from chefs who tend to be pretty practical, like Jamie Oliver, Mark Bittman. I don't use the recipes so much anymore, but I learned a lot of basics around substituting ingredients and how to build up basic things. Also, Michael Pollan's book, and I haven't read the one that came after from, I think it's Samin Nosrat, the salt, acid, fat, something else. But it teaches general concepts. Kenji Lopez Alt is another one I really like, where he, so these different writer chefs who taught me a lot of the basic concepts, and it took about like 10 years, honestly, to like gradually work on it. And then it got to a level where I volunteer in some meditation centers as like a head cook, and I have cooks who report to me, and I have the whole plan of what we're going to cook, and it's usually for about 30 to 60 people.
Wow.
So, I agree with you completely. If you're just getting restaurant food, A, you don't know what's in it. B, it's usually got a lot of extra fat, and probably if anyone has a salt sensitivity, you have to be that's pretty much how that and sugar are how they crank flavor.
Yeah.
And it's not, I'm also not, I've come around with sugar. I feel like sugar intake depends a lot on what your exercise load is. So yeah, I've learned the hard way. If you're doing a lot of exercise and not carb loading enough, and I shouldn't use that phrase, that has a specific meaning, but eating enough carbohydrates, you're actually depleting or doing a disservice to your muscles. They need glycogen. So but I found that like I cook a mixture of things so my kids now are ages 15, 13, and 9. I like to kind of meet them in the middle. Like I don't just cook crowd pleasers.
Yeah.
I like to stretch their palate a little bit.
Yeah.
I find it's not really that fulfilling if I go way off track and I'm like, hey, here's this, it's something they're just not ready to engage with at all. It's just like, they're not going to eat it, and it feels like a lot of wasted energy. It's not fully wasted, but so that's been helping for me. And then the final thing I did was calorie counting, and I've actually been doing that. I'm still doing it since I started last November using MyFitnessPal.
Yeah.
And I thought, I had this, I think, honestly, a bit of hubris with my medical and scientific background. I was like, I know about how much carbs and fat I should have and all this kind of thing. Turned out I really didn't until I did a calorie count. I wouldn't recommend doing it as long as I have, but I feel like doing a 1-month experiment where someone measures all the stuff they eat, for me, it blew my mind, like how much fat I was eating. Like I used to eat like a cup of peanut butter. That's like over 1,000 calories right there. Yeah. And it's way more, to be clear, way more fat than my body needs and not enough protein, especially when doing like weight training. Yeah, so things like that were just all really helpful.
No, it's interesting because I do the same thing. I count my calories, and a big part of it is that I've always struggled with my weight, right? It's always been an issue. I don't remember a time when I wasn't on a diet, right? And so for me, when I was emerging and trying to change myself, it was important for me to know what I was eating. And so I use MyFitnessPal all the time. I log everything that I eat, and I love to track my protein. And one of the things, because of me also having insulin resistance, and I talk about on many of my videos, is that my mom, there were 10 brothers and sisters, my dad 7. My dad's family, his brothers, they're all passed. My mother is 86, and she's the only one left out of the 10. Wow. And she was in the middle. And they all, except for maybe 1 or 2, developed type 2 diabetes, and were dealing with things like kidney dialysis and amputation. And so for me, it's always been frightening, right? Like that my genetics were predisposed me to that, and that was coming down the pike. So I really, in waking up and realizing 420 pounds, insulin resistant, like struggling or whatever, like it became so important for me to control what I was eating, know what it was, and understand how my body related to that. And it's so important for people to understand their genetics and what they're predisposed of. So that's really, really important. And so I know I agree with you totally that, it's important to kind of use it as a barometer to understand where you are. And then once you do that, you can step away from it. But it's kind of like a safety net for me. And it's even like I wear my a CGM too. Like I track my blood sugar is fantastic, right? It's been great ever since, and it goes up and down or whatever, but I've got it under control. But I need that safety net, I need that. So I totally understand that. So I want to. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about. I'm going to wrap it up in a few. So, but let's talk a little bit about what good looks like now. What are your evenings like? Like with your children and your wellness, and I mean, you do so much. Like on Instagram, I see you playing with jazz bands down in New Orleans, jamming, right? Like you've got a lot on your plate, and you are doing a great job with it. So talk to us about that, like what that looks like, what good looks like for you.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony. I also meant jump back to the cooking for a
Yeah.
moment. I forgot that another major barrier to entry with cooking is just getting the experience, getting the reps in to know how to cook things quickly. So that does.
Yes.
I don't really. I think there's some of the chefs I mentioned. Oh, plus Milk Street is a good one. They have like Tuesdays and something with like simple in the title. Yeah. You can maybe fact check me on that later. But they have a few like midweek type meals that usually like a half hour. Even if you're kind of slow, I'm kind of be inefficient. It's still like half hour, 40 minutes to get it done. And I feel like that can be time again if you know. It could be recentering time alone or with a loved one if you live with somebody. Yeah. So
Andrew, I think that's a great point, because one of the things that I did, and you'll see when I get you the cookbook, that I have, like, for my recipes, I have time, right? How much time it is. And so, like, if you're looking for a 20-minute meal or a 30-minute meal or something that's an hour, or meal prep, like a sheet pan, like, sausage and veggie bake, or like, I do a lot of, I love buttermilk soaked chicken. You soak it in the fridge. A lot of people do buttermilk fried chicken, but I soak it for a couple days in the fridge, flip it over so it's all in the buttermilk, and then rinse it off and then bake it, right? And if the skin is crispy, it's juicy. And like, that's like a meal for 3 or 4 days, right? That you can have. Yeah. So like, it's real, like you said, like it is about reps and it is about time management, because busy people tend to believe that it's very difficult to make time to cook. But I think it's more difficult to rebound from a really bad diet, right? And that is like, and I'm living proof of that, right? Of what that looks like. But yeah, so go ahead. I apologize. I interrupt you. I just wanted to talk about a little bit about that.
That's okay. There's so much to talk about. Well, the last thing I'll share too is that I have my like bachelor weeks where my kid, my ex-wife and I alternate weeks with the kids. Yeah. And so the weeks where I'm cooking every night, and then there are weeks where I'm just on my own. And I have been trying things like I'll batch cook chicken and salmon. And then I do have like a few template like bowls I'll make. They're like there's a Japanese, Korean, Mexican, and Italian type things that I can have stuff on hand. So if it's Japanese, just pre-cook some rice. I throw in some of these like nori and furikake, which is kind of like a topping. It might sound obscure, but you can get it like Trader Joe's, at least out here in California. And some soy sauce and maybe chop some veggies. And that's like pretty easy to do. Plus with the chicken I've already done ahead of time. Same thing. Mexican is just salsa, guacamole, maybe some rice again, some beans. Again, some of that takes some prep, but it's actually not that hard. And for me, that checks the boxes. I don't need like I'm a little basic that way. I can, but varied enough that it's interesting. So so ideal evenings, have quality time with the kids. I require that we all sit together for dinner, even if one of them's like stressed out about schoolwork or something. Usually try to have quality time with the kids. So usually one-on-one time. One of them is a few of them are musicians, but one is performs vocals. So I'll do a rehearsal with her, or I'll read books with my youngest, who's in 3rd grade, or sometimes I learned this trick from Lisa D'Amour, who's an expert with teens, especially girl teens, where I'll do, even if the kids don't seem to need my attention, they're just kind of in my house, I'll do like these kind of boring, what I consider to be boring administrative things, like scanning documents and recycling stuff from the mail. I'll do it in a central location. So and then it's apparently for teens, it helps them to approach. So that's, and then after that, I'll have about an hour max where I try to just unwind. So I try not to do any work at night, try not to have any deadlines at night. Occasionally it's really gotten good. It took me about 3 years to work on that. So, and then on a night when the kids are not there, I'll sometimes let the workday go a little bit longer because I don't have a firm ending, but then I'll usually rehearse music and, have an easy dinner just by myself. And then, usually do something else creative, or it could be either output, like something musical or writing, or it can be an input, like maybe I just want to relax and read a book or watch a movie or a show that I've been wanting to watch. I rarely binge anything. It's very muse driven for me, meaning like something a number of people have been telling me about, And I'm like, all right, let's give full attention to that.
Right.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but I try to, in general, I don't do things like, I used to do exercise like when the kids were babies and that was the only time I had. You got to make it work, and then I love to end with like a hot bath. And now I didn't answer your question about sports, but since I'm training for this rollerblading marathon, I'm getting a lot of,
wait, a rollerblading marathon?
Rollerblading marathon.
Wow.
Yeah. And I found this fun hashtag rollerblading is back. Cause sometimes I think people characterize it as like something that was cool in the 90s when we all wore neon or whatever. So to that topic, North Shore Inline is what it's called. It's in Duluth, Minnesota on the coast of Lake Superior. And this is an accumulation of things. So I got into rollerblading like when I was in elementary school, and I played ice hockey growing up and never lost my kind of coordination and connection. So I always, maybe once or twice a year, was skating. I taught my girls how to skate, do hockey stops, all that. And I think, as midlife, I was like, I guess I was just wondering, like, what if I always thought would be cool to do that I could still do at my age, and it would be good athletic training and fun. And I'd always wanted to own a pair of racing rollerblades, and I'd rented some a few times, and I was just like, As a side, a little memory, I was in Hilton Head once for a week with my family when I was a young kid, and there's this one rollerblading store that rented like these racing rollerblades. It was kind of like a bizarre business decision, because they're maybe not so safe. And I was just like on cloud nine, skating super fast. I had pads and helmet. Anyway, so back to the point. I learned about these marathon races. So you skate the distance of a runner's marathon, 26.2 miles. Yeah. This one is a to B kind of one. So it's like they bus you away from Duluth along the lake, and everyone gets started at the start line, and then you race on these roads that have been closed off along the lake. It's kind of breathtaking at some points, and you arrive back in the sort of city center of Duluth. And so I trained on my own last year, and it was an extremely challenging race physically. Like I was underprepared for it, but I had a time goal of 1 hour 40 minutes, and I made 1 hour 32.
Wow!
So I crushed that goal, and I qualified for the fastest amateur heat. So you have multiple heats based on your timing, and so it's basically one notch below the professional skaters. So I decided, like, maybe I could become an amateur athlete. And this year I'm working. Victor Thorup, who's a silver medalist from the recent Olympics in speed skating on the ice. He's agreed to coach me very generously. And he actually offers that for a lot of people. And I'm learning a new skating technique called the double push, which is a speed rollerblader thing. And it's, so I'm doing that, and I'm working with PT to help me with like balance and recovery. So I'm not like, because if you just jump into something like that, like train for a marathon, or whether it's, skates is a bit unusual, but you can, even if you're doing all the right things, your body will start to resist, and you can build, at the worst, get to injuries, but build up a lot of tension and inflammation. So that's what I'm working on. I'm not sure if I answered your original question.
No, you did. That's so exciting about the rollerblading, and that's really, really fascinating. I remember, like you said, the 90s was a big rollerblade. Like I was living in New York and rollerblading up 6th Avenue and almost killed myself. So,
oh my gosh.
Just like into traffic or whatever, but whatever. But that's really, really exciting. So I want to wrap it up. Anything you'd like to share that we didn't talk about? And then also, I want people to know where they can find you, where they can find Headland, and all of that. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much, Anthony. I think we covered most things. One thing we didn't cover, it reminded me of with music, is that I found it's maybe a derivative of this self-sweetness theme, but I found it's really helpful to have a patient long view with projects. So for instance, music, maybe I'll tell a little anecdote about music, because people can see me on Instagram performing with some of the most famous brass bands in New Orleans, like Rebirth Brass Band and New Breed. And New Breed was nominated for a Grammy recently.
Wow.
Performing with Trombone Shorty.
Oh yes, everyone knows that's big. Yeah. Wow.
And that's a shameless plug. I would like to perform either with Trombone Shorty or John Batiste in my near future.
Nice.
But that started. I mean, so I've been playing professionally since my 20s. But that went from like a dream of hearing those bands. The first time I went to Jazz Fest in New Orleans in 2024. To then I came back to New Orleans and worked remotely with my with Headland in like August 2024, and I was so nervous. I went out and danced at some of the clubs where these bands perform, and I think I told them I played music, but I didn't know the repertoire, and I just had to like build the confidence. So I gradually started to learn the material bit by bit, and it was last summer where I really felt like I crossed over, where I had learned enough material that I could sit in with these bands. And
I remember you telling me like you were excited about going down there and doing all that.
Yeah. So that's definitely been a mindset of this gain mindset. I guess it does riff on that theme, but again, a snapshot could look like, okay, yeah, whatever. He's a professional musician. That's not really relevant to me, but it's really more about this journey that I've been patiently on, and not really with any fixed deadline. I had some goals. Like I wanted to perform with Rebirth, and I've now performed with them numerous times, often as their only guest, often sometimes for the whole show. And now I'm doing paid gigs in New Orleans, because the sitting in is an honor, and not just anyone can do that, but it's usually not paid. And now I'm doing paid professional gigs in New Orleans. This is accumulating, and that's following my muse. But so that's an important part.
Awesome.
Where to find me? Instagram is the letter J, then Andrew Mckee. Headlandstrategy.com is Headland Strategy Group.
Yep.
Those are the two main ways.
LinkedIn,
I think it's /Andrew Mckee, because I got that pretty early. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Would love people to reach out. Always like to be a sounding board if folks have questions. Always a game to make new friends, and hopefully something I said today resonates. I know we all walk a different part of life, and so I was eager to hear what resonated, what didn't, because we have different experiences. So,
no, Andrew, I want to thank you for today. I want to thank you for your friendship and your time. These 3 years have been really, really enlightening, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate you making the time to be here today. And I look forward to having you back.
I'd be honored.
Okay, great. You heard that. He'll be back. So thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Feelings mutual. I feel touched and grateful. So thank you.
Thank you.